Okay, this is going to be a video response to Pete's magazine. Pete at theARMORYchannel and his let's see if I can zoom out here. Get this in here. And his video on the lowering the hammer on the 1911 and basically the information that goes with that. And let's see if we can't. First, I'm going to take the, of course, this is a Springfield, by the way, in case you were wondering. And we're not going to worry about the slide. We'll leave the slide away. But the first thing I want to show before I get any further down is this here. This button there. That is the disconnect. And the disconnect disconnects the sear from the trigger so that when the firearm is out of battery, pulling the trigger will not let the hammer fall. And I'll show you that once we get into the back of the firearm here. Okay, here's the mainspring housing. Mainspring housing houses the mainspring. What the mainspring does is the mainspring pushes up on the hammer strut here. This is the hammer strut, and exerts about around 22 pounds of pressure. And that's what's keeping, when the hammer's cocked, all that pressure is pushing. You can see right here, I'm pushing up on the hammer strut, and the hammer's engaged. I'm pushing up on this, and I could push on this all day long, and the hammer and the sear are engaged up in here. And once we let that down, and this here is the sear spring, this right here. This is what is putting tension on the sear. This right here is putting tension on the sear, and you really can't see it in there because it's really hard. I'll take it out here in a second. And this is the sear spring. It also activates the disconnect. This thing here, you can see the disconnect fell down now that I took the spring out, because there's no tension on the disconnect now. And so this is the sear spring, and it activates, and it works for the grip safety. This is what keeps the grip safety out. And when you push down, it pushes down on this spring and allows you to deactivate the grip safety. So this is kind of a 3-in-1 spring. This is the sear spring, the disconnect spring, and the grip safety spring, all in one spring. So that's to the side. Now that that's out, you can see that there's no pressure on the sear, so the sear is not engaging with the hammer really. It might every now and then, but it's pretty much free floating. And now we're going to take out, I'll go ahead and leave that, don't need that anymore. Go ahead and take out the hammer. Okay, so here's the hammer. You can see the hammer here, and the hammer hooks. There would be the half cock, and then full cock here, the hammer hooks. So there's your hammer. And then the last two parts, the sear and the disconnect. If you can see them here. I'm going to try and zoom in here so you can see these a lot better. There we go. Okay. And let's see. Oh, and so you didn't even get to see that. I was zoomed in too much. Sorry. Magazine release. And then that allows for the trigger to come out. So here's your trigger. Okay. Got your trigger, got your sear, and your disconnect. Let's line these up here. Your hammer. Where's my sear spring? Okay, sear spring. Let's move this up a little bit. There we go. Sear spring is here. Hammer strut will be down here. Mainspring housing down here. So your mainspring housing will be pushing up on your sear, your hammer strut, all that stuff. Here's your disconnect. And what happens when you actually fire the 1911 is you pull the hammer to the rear, and if the disconnect is aligned up properly, let's see if we can do this here. It presses on the sear and releases the sear. But if it's out of battery, meaning this is pushed down, it just pivots past the sear and doesn't engage the sear. This is just the sear. This is the sear here. That's it. No spring, just a little metal part. This is it. Like I said, here's the hammer sear. Now, what they were talking about, what everyone's talking about as far as lowering the hammer is concerned and how it could damage things. If you got the hammer cocked and you got your sear, or if it's lowered, when it's lowered down, it's like this. Your hammer and sear engagement are like this. They kind of spoon each other like this. Then when you cock it, if you cock it to half cock, it locks like this. Then when you cock it to full cock, it cocks like that. Now, if you pull the trigger and let the hammer fall to half cock and fall, like I said, there's about 22 pounds of pressure in this spring here, in the mainspring, down in the mainspring housing, and that's pushing up on the hammer. And if you let that fall as hard as it can to that sear face on the half cock, you could damage it. If you just keep banging it and banging it and banging it, or if you cock it all the way back and you don't get it all the way to full cock there and it slips and it bangs down to half cock, you could end up damaging that sear face there. So when you're cocking it, when you're actually doing the cocking, when you pull it back and it snaps past and then it snaps past, that really does nothing to hurt the sear or the hammer. Let me see if I can really zoom in there. Oh, that's getting a little too close. Really can't see it. But the sear face has a very, very, very gentle angle to it, and could get damaged or broken or cracked, and that's where you really want to be careful. This would be hammer down, and then you cock it, and then you let it fall to half cock. You're just putting a lot of pressure on that sear face, and that's where you get problems. Like I said, cocking it from half cock, not a big deal. So that's pretty much the whole story with half cock, condition 2, lowering the hammer. Like I said, the only 2 springs in the back of the frame, there's one more spring in the frame, I guess you could say, and that's the plunger spring inside the plunger tube there. And if you really wanted to get technical, I guess this could be considered in the frame too, the recoil spring. But in the back of the 1911, there's only 2 springs. The sear spring, mainspring, and so there's no spring. The sear is not a spring. The sear is a sear. And that's how they all work.